Hi there, it's Jane Birkinshaw here to talk to you about the theme for October, which was symmetry. Now, I always say this, but really it has been extremely tough this month to look through the images, pick out my favourites, and then ultimately to pick my overall favourite because the images are all so varied. So, take a few minutes to look at the collage here and see which one you would pick as a favourite. I've eventually gone with a kind of instinctive, almost emotional decision, I would say. So some of you might come to a different conclusion, and I think that's absolutely fine. Now, with regard to the theme and why symmetry is important in photography and in other formats as well, when you have symmetry, what you have is something that feels reassuring, it feels structured, it's safe, it's familiar, and it's comforting. And the human eye is drawn to visual perfection, and we associate beauty with symmetry, perfectly symmetrical features, etc. And an image that is symmetrical feels balanced, it feels stable and tidy. So we find that all very comforting and reassuring, and it can feel very harmonious and calm too. But a symmetrical image can also appear quite austere, quite over-organised, quite hard and flat too. So when we're using it in a photograph as a compositional tool, we have to decide what do we want our image to communicate, and we have to consider the other elements of the image, the other components that are going to help communicate the message that we want people to feel, or we want to feel when we review the image. So things like colour, shape, the texture, the light, and how shadow falls to make our image then feel safe, warm, harmonious, or austere, cold, very structured, very man-made. So bearing all of that in mind, let's go through the images that I've selected and in the usual manner, and I will make some comments and then ultimately get to my favourite at the end. Okay, so first of all, we have this picture by Simon Hepburn, which is of the, is it the Louvre in Paris? Please excuse my ignorance. A well-known photographed place, this with the modern versus the old. And what I felt about this image, I like it, Simon. It is very structured, very austere, very organised, particularly the modern element. But what makes it perhaps feel slightly less austere is the lighting within it, which is very warm and kind of almost comforting. So I think that kind of changes what could have been quite a cold, steely image into something that feels a little bit more welcoming. So thanks for that submission, Simon. Then we have a very different symmetrical image from Helen Wilson. I really like this one. It's quite a different use of symmetry, and the symmetry obviously comes from the figure being in the centre, the bushes either side, and it's relatively even throughout the rest of the picture, but it certainly isn't a completely symmetrical image, and I think that's something that we can take from this and use. It doesn't have to be completely formal symmetry. But if you take a moment to think about how this image makes you feel, for me, it feels calming. It feels as if this person is taking a moment to themselves to admire the scenery, a bit of time out. And it does feel very calm, spacious, safe, kind of a good moment in that person's life. That's what I take from it, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because other people with different things going on in their lives or whatever could feel differently about that image. So thank you for that, Helen. Then we have this image from Rachel Underhill. Now, again, the symmetry is slightly off on this. It's not completely symmetrical, but I would class it as an image that you can use under symmetry. And I think it's the fact that it is slightly off, that it comes across more as quirky. And obviously it's an unusual subject, isn't it, in some respects. It's obviously some kind of art installation, but I like it. I like the simplicity of it. I think that really works. We've just got the white, we've got the lines, and we've got the orange of the umbrellas. So we've got a slightly off-kilter, quirky image here. Now, I did feel with this one, Rachel, that a little bit of editing could lift the orange here and really make it pop. So, I mean, this program I've got here isn't the usual one I use for editing. In fact, it's about to die on its feet, Picasa. But I've always liked it in terms of being able to look through my images. But if we have a look there, if I've just had a quick look at the tuning of your image there and lifted the midtones and the highlights, and it's really made quite a difference there. So it just makes it pop a little bit more. Okay, thanks very much for that, Rachel. Then we've got this image by Ray Fung, which again is very formal symmetry, very even, and comes across as very organised, very linear, and it gives us some depth in the image. The colours are very nice, so it as as symmetry. It doesn't give me much in the terms of emotion, I guess, at the end. It's kind of like a nice capture, but isn't as such telling a really nice story or grabbing my attention. Whereas hang on for it, Ray, because there is another image that I really like that you've done. Okay, and then we've got this one by Andrea, and I really like his image. Very cold and austere, this, isn't it? I think the black and white works perfectly. The rigid symmetry is really making this feel very uniform, very hard, all hard lines, hard textures, hard paving. The only thing that possibly could have saved it from feeling so hard doesn't grab our attention because it's in black and white, and I think that's quite right. And the other feeling I got from this was kind of these houses where it reminds me of sort of miners' houses or mill houses, that sort of thing, where the people would have been living in very, sort of little not chocolate box, very boxy housing, all very much the same, the repetitiveness of it, then perhaps overlooked by the bigger houses that were perhaps where the management lived. Again, this is just what I take out of this image. We're all going to take very different things, but symmetry used very well here. In quite a hard, austere way. So thanks, Andrea. Then we have Ray Fung's other image. Now, I really like this one, and I think it's quite interesting, actually, that in quite a lot of these images, especially some of the ones to come, and I guess with the orange umbrellas as well, it's really and maybe the first image we saw as well, it's probably the Georges Pompidou Centre, isn't it? Anyway, it's the warmth of the colours that really stop some of these symmetrical images actually becoming very hard and cold. So here we have a tram, a tube train, and very symmetrical, lovely image, lots of hard lines, depth taking our eye through the carriageway. Just look though, if we take the colour out of this image and we go black and white, look how hard and cold that becomes, whereas when we take it back out again, introduce the colour back again, we see how warm and comforting this orange makes a huge difference. And it makes me wonder whether when they designed the carriages that they purposely used this orange to stop it looking so cold and harsh. And anyway, great image, Ray, really like that one. Then another superb image by Thomas Batson-Well. Very different subject here. We've got nature, a beautiful seed head. I mean, the featheriness of this is perfect. I really like it. And I love the fact that it's stark white against this mottled coloured background, very soft focus background. And it makes you realise how much symmetry there is to be found in nature. And I think you've captured that really well, Thomas. And it is one of my favourites. It's great. Thank you. Then we've got this image by Alan, which when he first posted it, I thought it was wonderful. Again, symmetry, being very cold, very hard. putting it into black and white, reinforcing that, the different textures, the structures, all and the shadows, all being very brought into relief in the fact that it's black and white. So that can be really good, black and white, for emphasising shape and light and shadows and forms. A good way to have a look at our composition and see how it's working. So a great find there, Alan. You've got a good eye. The only thing I thought with this was, would it be worth just upping the contrast a little bit? It just felt a tiny bit flat to me. Very slight up of a tweak of contrast there, but again, you know, it's all personal stuff, and that's just my opinion. Okay, thanks, Alan. Then another one by Alan, quite a different image here, and it's interesting, isn't it, because this is a man-made structure. You could kind of say, okay, this is quite hard and cold, it's symmetrical, you know, but it isn't, is it, at all, because of the colours and the age and the you know, the textures within it. That stops it being a cold, hard, man-made structure. And again, I think it is colour, yeah, and as I said, texture that really makes this image work. It's very pleasing to look at, and a great example of symmetry. Fabulous image here from Tim. Really nice spot here, Tim. Fabulous. I mean, train lines, tram lines. So it's tram lines, isn't it? I guess in Manchester or somewhere. Really, really nice for the theme. Very clever. Completely symmetrical, even down to the light at the sides. But I just love the fact that these pigeons here are just breaking that symmetry, and that can work really well if you are using symmetry in your images, to just then have something that just breaks that symmetry, breaks the formality a little bit, and brings in a sign of life or slight disorganisation. So I hope that didn't sound like waffle, but I really liked that shot, Tim. Oh, and then another one that everybody really liked, Liz Kenny. Superb capture here. I don't care about the noise and stuff in it, because, and that's one of the things to remember, don't be frightened of up in your ISO having that grain if it means that you're going to capture shots like this. Perfect reflections. It's symmetry all round, actually, isn't it? It's symmetry horizontally, vertically, and the colours in it are what make it really work. So a fantastic image there, Liz. Really, really struggling, I have to say, to pick between these last few images. Very, very hard. They are all worthy favourites in my opinion, but because I always do, I am going to go for a favourite instinctively in a moment. Okay, then this one by Chris Key, which again I really like. Again, slightly off kilter, slightly unsymmetrical because of the ripples down here, but isn't that what makes it? It definitely classes as symmetry in my eye, but then it's kind of been I don't know, given a bit of a twist by, you know, these elements that aren't quite symmetrical. And to me, again, it's the colours, the blues and the oranges, how lovely they are, that make this work for me as well. So great capture there. Thank you, Chris. Then on to another marvellous shot. I mean, where do I start with them this month? I mean, come on, guys, how am I supposed to pick? So this one is by Farhat Naweed. Hello again, Farhat. We haven't heard from you for quite a while, and then you come blasting in with this shot. Really, really beautiful. We've got symmetry going on straight down the middle here, but what I really like is the juxtaposition of the warm stone or whatever it is versus the cold structural metal and glass in this part of the image. And then you've got the soft round circles here, again, versus all those hard lines. And I'm sure that's what the architect was going for as well when they designed this. So great capture there, Farhat. And then on to my favourite, which might be a bit contentious, I don't know. As I've said, I've gone for this kind of emotionally in a way. I just thought it was a really different take on symmetry, and a really good find. And it's by Kelly B, who's one of our newer members. And I love the colours in it and the textures and just the idea in itself. It was a great concept, really well delivered. Slightly not symmetrical, just in this tidal line here. But honestly, I love it. The colours all work so well. And if you just want to bear with me a second and look back at this and the last two images, the previous two, look at the colour palette. That one, and that one. All very, very similar colour palettes. And I don't know if and many of you are real film buffs, but this terracotta and kind of turquoise colour, once you start to notice it, it is used in film an incredible amount, and it's been proven that these colours, as human beings, we react very, very well to them, and it's used in colouring in films as well. So anyway, as I said, so hard to choose, but I make myself choose one in the end. Well done to everybody for these submissions, and carry on submitting for unscripted. I know it's been a bit of a tough one to get your heads around, but the images are really starting to come in now, and there's been some really good interpretations. So thank you for listening. Bit of a long one, this one, but thanks for staying with me, and I'll be speaking to you again soon.